Walk up to any butcher's counter and the choices are always the same: beef, pork, chicken, lamb. You don't think about why, those are just the options. But stand there long enough and you'll notice something missing, something enormous. There is an animal walking around right now with more meat on its body than 5 cows combined, the largest land animal alive. A single one could feed a village for weeks, and it appears on almost no plate anywhere on Earth. Not in Europe, not in America, not across most of Asia. The elephant. And here's the strange part. It isn't that we never tried. We ate elephants for nearly 2 million years. Archaeologists working in Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania recently found the butchered remains of a giant prehistoric elephant cut apart with stone tools around 1.8 million years ago, surrounded by dozens of those tools. Our ancestors weren't nibbling scavenged scraps. They were carving these animals up on purpose, and some early human groups built their entire survival around finding them. So the real question isn't why we don't eat elephants, it's why we stopped. And the moment you go looking for the answer, every explanation you'd reach for first falls apart. Start with the obvious one. They're too big. Except that can't be it, because we hunted whales, animals the size of buses, on an industrial scale for centuries. And we slaughter roughly 300 million cattle every year without a second thought. Size was never the obstacle. Then maybe the meat is just bad. But the people who have actually eaten it don't say that. Hunters, explorers, and communities that still eat it describe it as tough, but perfectly edible. Something like a very lean, best slow cooked or dried into strips. Not a delicacy, but nobody's calling it inedible. There's a smarter guess. Spoilage. And this one gets closer. Before refrigeration, dropping a 6-ton animal in the heat was a logistics nightmare. A cow can be processed by one family in an afternoon. An elephant starts rotting within hours, and no single hunting party could butcher and preserve that much meat before most of it went to waste. There's even a health catch on top of it. Elephants can carry tuberculosis, and it can pass to the people handling them. But as real as all that is, it still doesn't explain the thing you actually feel. It doesn't explain the quiet revulsion most people get just imagining a plate of it. Practical problems don't produce disgust. So something deeper is going on. And it's really a stack of reasons sitting on top of each other. The first is buried in how slowly elephants reproduce. A female is pregnant for nearly 22 months, the longest pregnancy of any land animal on Earth, and then she gives birth to a single calf. She might wait 4 or 5 years before the next one, and that calf won't be ready to breed for a decade or more. Compare that to a cow, which can deliver a calf every single year. That difference is everything. You cannot farm an elephant. You'd kill your breeding stock faster than it could ever replace itself. Even now, with all our technology, no one has ever built a self-sustaining elephant operation for meat. So when humans shifted from hunting to farming, somewhere around 10,000 years ago, the animals that could sustain a food supply became livestock, and the ones that couldn't quietly dropped off the menu. Elephants lost that filter before it was even a conscious choice. The second reason is darker. As humans spread across the planet, the giant animals we met had never encountered us before. They didn't run. And in continent after continent, the largest creatures collapsed within a few thousand years of our arrival, a pattern so consistent that scientists gave it a name, the overkill hypothesis. Though how much was us and how much was a changing climate is still argued. Africa's elephants are one of the few that survived, precisely because they'd grown up alongside us and learned to fear us. But then a new pressure arrived. Ivory. There may have been 3 to 5 million African elephants in 1900. Then the tusk trade exploded, and in the single decade of the 1980s, roughly 1,000 tons of ivory were leaving Africa every year, and the population was cut in half. In 1989, the world banned the international ivory trade, and today the African savanna elephant is endangered, the forest elephant critically endangered, the Asian elephant endangered. You can't build a food industry around an animal that's illegal to kill and that we nearly wiped out. And there's a cold economic twist underneath it. A living elephant pulling in safari tourists year after year is worth far more than its meat ever could be. The third reason is that in much of the world, the elephant stopped being prey and became something else entirely. In South and Southeast Asia, people captured and trained them, not to eat, but to work and to fight. War elephants were living tanks. When Alexander the Great pushed into what is now Pakistan in 326 BCE and met the elephants of King Porus, his hardened soldiers were rattled at the sight of them. You don't eat your artillery. And the animal climbed higher still, into the sacred. The elephant-headed god Ganesha is among the most beloved deities in Hinduism. A white elephant is a holy sign in Buddhism. You do not eat something that carries your gods. In the very places elephants were most common, a taboo took root, never written down, just quietly handed from one generation to the next. Not this animal. But here's the part that's actually about you. Because notice what none of this is about. It isn't about the meat. Nutritionally, an elephant is just meat, the same protein and fat and iron as beef. The barrier was never the animal's body. It was what the animal came to mean. And elephants make that meaning very hard to ignore. In 2006, researchers confirmed that an elephant can recognize itself in a mirror, touching a mark on its own head that it could only see in the reflection. A test almost no species passes. They live in tight families led by an elder female carrying decades of memory. And they grieve. Researchers like Cynthia Moss and Joyce Poole have watched wild elephants return to the bones of their dead, years later, gently running their trunks over the skulls and standing in what looks unmistakably like silence. An animal that knows itself and mourns its dead. Now hold that beside the real rule that governs your entire diet. A psychologist named Paul Rosin spent decades showing that disgust, especially about food, is mostly something we're taught. It's inherited, it spreads through a culture, and once it sets, it's almost impossible to unlearn. Think about it honestly. You eat pigs without a flicker, and a pig is at least as intelligent as a dog. But a dog? A dolphin? A chimpanzee? You wouldn't, even if someone swore it was safe and legal. The difference between those two lists isn't nutrition and it isn't safety. It's distance. The animals on your plate are the ones you were never allowed to get close to, never watched raise their young, never saw grieve. The animals you'd refuse are the ones you gotta know. The elephant simply crossed that line on the scale of an entire species, over thousands of years of living beside us. So you never actually decided that elephants aren't food. You were born into a world where that was settled long before you arrived, by farmers in the Fertile Crescent choosing which animals could feed the most people, by priests who turned an animal into a god, by 100 generations who worked beside these creatures and watched them mourn their own. The revulsion you feel isn't your instinct. It's your inheritance. 2 million years of eating elephants, and then the farming math broke, the sacred meaning grew, and extinction raised the stakes until somewhere in the middle of it all, your ancestors quietly agreed. Not this one, not anymore. And here's the thought to sit with. Somewhere on your plate tonight is an animal that isn't fundamentally different from the ones you'd never touch. It's just one you were never given the chance to know. You were born already knowing which animals are food and which ones aren't. You just never knew that someone long before you made that choice for you.